Hello and welcome back to the Football Terrace. Manchester United have had a brilliant start to the summer transfer window, securing Jadon Sancho and Raphael Varane, bringing them to Old Trafford, improving Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's squad ahead of what is set to be a very, very important and pivotal season for the Norwegian and the football club. Fans returning, new deal for Ole. The expectations are growing, but the squad is getting better and better by the minute. Joined tonight by a very, very special guest. We're going to go through some of the biggest transfer rumors surrounding United at the moment. Could Kieran Trippier be the next done deal? Jan Fjortoft sent everybody into a frenzy this afternoon with his tweet about that potentially coming next. We can look at Man United's midfield situation with Ruben Neves, Saul Niguez, CAMAVINGA all being linked to the football club as well. We're going to delve in and look at a little bit on the Ole deal and the backlash that come from that. There was also a madness of maybe one of the funniest links I have ever seen before in my life of Paul Pogba being touted to Liverpool. We're going to delve into all that and much, much more. Take a look at the rivals as well, with West Ham closing in on the signing or practically securing the signing now of Zuma. I nearly forgot his name then. Kurt Zuma from Chelsea Football Club. The transfer window. Do me a favor and smash that like button. Share this stream on your social media platforms. Make sure you're subscribing and you turn on the bell notifications. Here we go. Welcome back to the terrace. I'm joined by Rob. How are you, mate?
I'm good, Terry. How are you, mate?
Yeah, can't complain at all. Can't complain at all. Things are going well. Very, very happy. Good summer so far for Man United. So as a United fan, so excited about the beginning of the season. No doubt about it at all. It's been to bring in the caliber of player we have so far is just exceptional. Just exceptional, I think.
It's about time. You know, I think we've been looking to try and add world-class talent. And I think when you look at, obviously, Sancho and now with Varane almost confirmed by the football club, but obviously to come and have his medical and sign on the dotted line, I think with those two players just on their own, Manchester United are certainly stronger this season.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that whatsoever. It's one of those things for me which, you know, there's a lot of talk, and I know we're going to get onto Ole later in his contract, but of course there's this, who can Man United bring in? Do they still have pulling power? Both of those players, what was exceptional for me is if I stop being neutral for a minute and be a Man United fan, is they both unequivocally wanted Man United. Nobody else was chasing them because they wanted to join what's going on at the club. And I think if we think back 2.5 years ago in the state that we were in when Jose Mourinho left, the player power that had come into the dressing room, the lack of direction that the club had, the zero structure in any approach. And, you know, it very much felt like every department of the club was going off in its own direction. We were celebrating noodle deals more than we were what we were doing on the pitch. To turn that round and to be able to attract these two players, I think is absolutely exceptional. And of course, Ole has been, I know fans don't like it, but Ole has been a big part of that.
Yeah, he's been pivotal on both these deals. I think with Jadon Sancho going back 12 months, this was very much an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer target from day one. Ole kept contact with the player all the way through the last year. And I think we saw with Varane as well that Ole kind of triggered that. He was the person that he wanted to bring in for the defence. Obviously, the contract implications at Real Madrid there gave Manchester United the edge. But these are very much Ole Gunnar Solskjaer transfer targets that United are going for. This is not kind of transfer by committee. The restructure at the football club has helped that, but Ole is the one pulling the strings.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And something I was told, and I don't know information that you've received, but it's almost a lot of what's being built at the club, although Ole is and we know Ole is the manager and the coach of the football team, a lot of the new approaches you say are almost have been consultatively built by Ole. Ole's been helping the club to kind of put a lot of these structures in place, which is one of the reasons why I think he's which is one of the things why I think his new deal is still needed at this point, even though I have doubts over his coaching ability of the team. I look at the way the club is structured. I'm thinking medium to long term. Right now, he's still very, very important for what we're doing as a football club. And we'll get back onto Ollie a little bit later, because I know people want to ask about that. Viewers, if you've got any questions for Rob, please get them in. One of the next transfers on everybody's lips at the moment is Kieran. We'll get onto the midfield later because everyone's desperate for a midfielder. But Kieran Trippier has been linked on and off with Man United throughout the course of the summer. We've had Dean Jones on here and Pete O'Rourke, who've always been fairly consistent with what they've said, that Trippier would love to come back to England. He'd love to play for Man United. Man United want him. But there's just been a differential in the price between what Atletico want and what Man United are sort of willing to pay. What's your understanding of this deal yourself? And do you see Kieran Trippier becoming a Man United player this summer?
I think it's in the balance, mainly because of the price. So Kieran Trippier would like to come back to the Premier League, no doubt about that. Kieran Trippier is a Manchester United fan. Everybody knows that as well. So there is a kind of all these parts of this potential deal which are the easy bits. The tough bit is the 30 million quid that was the original valuation, or around that 30 million pound, for a 30-year-old fullback who would even play every week if Wan-Bissaka was on form. So Manchester United are not in the realm of wasting money. You know, with COVID times as it is, they've been very kind of acute with their transfer targets. And we saw last year, Donny van de Beek came to the football club for kind of mid-30s, did play 36 games, but had very little impact. So I think United want to avoid that. They don't want to bring in signings this summer that might possibly not even play. So I think that is where the deal there is in the balance. Certainly Trippier, I think, you know, his value is high after the Euros. Obviously, it's brought his name back to where he would like it to be in the public spotlight. But I'm not sure about this deal. It's not a done deal. It certainly isn't anything close to being that. Manchester United, if they do execute this deal, it will be because they find buyers for maybe Delot and Brandon Williams, and they feel that they've got the space in the squad. As it stands, yes, Trippier would be welcomed at United, but only for the right price.
Yeah, I get that completely. I think it's one of those deals that everything you've said that echoes what I've been told. It's a deal that's on, that United are. And you got to be careful of your words because everyone interprets them, but they're actively looking at. But it's, as you say, it's about ins and outs now for Man United. And I think we go back to the Sancho and Varane situation. It was really nice to see us buy before we got rid of players in those particular areas because they were needed. I think in years gone by, it would have been, we've got to get rid of, I don't know, Lingard and Dan James. And if we get rid of them, then we'll bring somebody in. But I think as the squad is as it is now, you do get to a point where you can't actually afford to keep adding. You do need to move some people on. So it's going to be an interesting one to see what happens there with Trippier. If he does come in, like, how and where do you see him improving Manchester United yourself?
I'm not 100% sure that he does. I think he's a decent player, Kieran Trippier. I think he did well for England and he did really well for Atletico Madrid. No doubt about any of those things. Does he come in and walk into Manchester United's team? Well, let's use Telles as the example last year. 12 months ago, most Manchester United fans were not hot on Luke Shaw, and they wanted Telles at the football club, an assist machine, a guy who gets involved with goal assists and all sorts, can score penalties, can take free kicks, hardly got a sniff. So that was a player obviously came at the lower end of the value, and I think that's where Manchester United would be attracted to Kieran Trippier. If you were talking more about £15 million for his signature, I think that this would a deal that would be done almost already. But does Trippier really strengthen Manchester United? For me, not really. I think Aaron Wan-Bissaka is going to have a big year this year. I think with Raphael Varane inside him rather than Victor Lindelof, that's a huge change in terms of United's philosophy. And he'll be able to get forward, get goals and get assists. And I think he will be the starter, whoever comes into the football club.
Yeah, I do feel there's certainly areas that AWB needs to improve. Social media can be an interesting place when it comes to opinion on football, as we were discussing before we went live. And AWB seems to be a player that a lot of noisy people have grown a little bit tired of, which I find weird. He's 22, 23 years of age. He's still learning his game. I just feel that he's got better and better going forward. Is he of the Reece James or Trent Alexander-Arnold level when it comes to crossing yet and things? No, but can he improve? Yes. Defensively, there's a few areas getting caught under the ball that he's got to improve on. But I'm in agreement with you. I think if Kieran Trippier comes in, it's Telles-esque. You're going to be you're going to cover at left back and right back. You're going to help us when we need to rotate. That's the one thing I think AWB does need is, if he goes for a little rough patch or he picks up a knock, it's good to have that quality cover there. But I also think it will push AWB onto that next level and almost have that same kind of impact that we've seen from Luke Shaw on the other side. So I'm a bit like you. A lot of people suddenly think Trippier comes in, he becomes the main starter. AWB's pushed up. Like AWB was a £50 million signing for the short, medium, and long term. There's no sounds that coming out of Man United that Ollie or the team have lost patience with him. So I'm in full agreement with you there. I think it's a squad signing, especially at the money we're trying to spend. If we were looking for him to replace for the next 3 or 4 years our main right back, I think we'd be willing to spend 30 odd million pounds. The fact we're trying to get it for 15 to 18 tells me it's back up in itself. Midfield's another key area that people are desperate for. And the first question I want to ask you, Rob, is do you think it's a lot of people, the phrase I'm hearing a lot of is no CDM, no party, no CDM, no title challenge, no CDM, we don't improve as a football club. What's your take on that?
I think it's a very kind of narrow-minded way of looking at it in terms of football and systems and how you want to play. Now, we addressed this on our show on the masterclass recently, and so many United fans are hooked and sold on 4-3-3. That's how they want the club to play. And if you play 4-3-3, you need a specialist central defensive midfielder. No doubt about it. But Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's not going to play 4-3-3. I know people have talked about it a lot. It's not going to happen. He might play it at times when it's allowed against the opponent, whoever that might be. But there's this big kind of fallacy about defensive midfielders and how you do it. And I think when you look at football clubs now, especially the top ones, yes, some do have specialists in that area, but most don't. Most have more fluid midfields. Most have players who do box-to-box work. Lots of teams now play the double pivot, including our own football club. And these are systems which are kind of ingrained in certain ways of how to do stuff. You could look at someone like Ndidi from Leicester, and he would cost a hell of a lot of money. He's a central defensive midfielder, and he would be a disaster in United's double pivot. He can't do the certain things that you need in there to move the ball along. So it's all very well us talking about midfielders and who you want to play and all of this. What you need is versatility. So you need players who can do a little bit of everything and do it well, as opposed to being just specialists. If you could get N'Golo Kante, yes, go and buy him tomorrow. But there's no N'Golo Kantes on the market. There are defensive midfielders, but again, do they make you win the title? For me, the answer is no.
Do you know what's interesting about your take there? What I like about that is last season, football fans I love, like you'll know this, you've been around the block many times. Like hipsters might be a bit disrespectful, but all I heard all year from a variety of fans was double pivots are too negative. Double pivots never win you anything. Using a double pivot is, in every game is a negative and horrible way to play football. And then Thomas Tuchel comes in, and Thomas Tuchel is a very clever man. He doesn't call it a double pivot. He calls it twin sixes. And suddenly it's fashionable. Suddenly it's a brilliant thing to do. And invariably he was using two players in that double pivot that you wouldn't recognize as being progressive attacking midfielders. They were more of your holding defensive CDM, deep lying playmaker type roles. Again, whatever phrase people want to use, they can use. Would I like to see an improvement in Man United's midfield? Yes. I think you're absolutely bang on. It depends on the kind of system we're going to play. If we do go 4-3-3, then maybe you do need that specialist, as you say. But I'm still not convinced we're going to go away from the system that we've already been playing. Well, Pogba's future is going to be interesting to see how that works and how that weighs up as well. Some of the players we're linked with, Rob, like Ruben Neves, Sauna Geds. What's your take? Can you see those deals being struck and those types of players coming in this summer?
Well, they are two players that Manchester United are looking at. They've made contact with the clubs in terms of whether they can get hold of them and their availability. And it looks like that both players will be on the move at some point this summer. Atletico Madrid need the money. And plus, there's obviously lots of things going on behind the scenes with Griezmann as well. So there's that potential. Manchester United, I think, when they look at what they need as their third piece, and I think this is where we go back to the Trippier argument, is that do United go and spend £30 million on a right back that doesn't play, or do they go and put that money towards buying a midfielder that plays lots of minutes, that provides lots more upside of value, allows you to maybe break up the pivot between Fred and McTominay, and let you do something different? And Ole actually says yesterday when you talked about Varane, the big reason for selling him is that he allows you to do different things that our current players do not allow. So I think that they say it's kind of like no smoke without fire. United do like Neves. I think he would be the more likely choice as it stands. But Saul is being shopped around Europe, so I can see him moving. I think the Premier League is a realistic destination for him. And then it just depends if United want to put funds towards those things. I think the Pogba situation is a big part of that, whether he moves on this summer or not. There's still, I think, a 50-50 chance that he stays and signs a new contract. They are still negotiating. There isn't an impasse or anything like that. The deal is on the table and they are still talking. And I actually don't think there's as much realism in the talk with PSG as maybe being reported in the press. I think a lot of that is a lot of PSG people talking. Should I say the word rubbish? Yeah, rubbish. But there is a chance you could get a PSG, no doubt about that again. But that would come down to them maybe selling 3 or 4 players first.
Something that was said to me in the week, and I love what you said there, Rob. The Pogba situation is interesting. First of all, so we get the elephant in the room out of the way.
Yeah.
He's not going Liverpool, is he?
No.
I love that rumor. Honestly, the best rumor I've ever seen in my life. I died when I read it this morning. I was like, wow, okay, so cool. He's not going Liverpool. That's a good one.
It's clickbait.
Yeah, I mean,
pure clickbait.
Do you know what's mad about it is this? Like, if don't matter what kind of journalist I am, if I was a journalist and someone said to me, I've just heard this, you don't even have to, you just know it's never going to happen. Like Pogba, for all of what he is or isn't, he would never, forget whether it's true or not, he wouldn't even do that, in my opinion. I don't think Paul Pogba would anyway, but the Pogba situation I find really interesting. I feel not sorry for him. That would be the wrong, I don't think I'd ever feel like, on a footballing sense, I wouldn't ever feel sorry for any multi-millionaire footballer with the lifestyle they've got. This is probably the wrong word. But I feel like he's at a crossroad here. Are Man United going to improve enough for me to want to stay here?
Mm-hmm.
Are Real Madrid going in the right direction for me to maybe move there at some point in the very near future, which has always been touted as his dream move? Or do I go back to Paris? And it's almost, if he signs that new deal with Man United too early, the Madrid dream's over. Same as if he goes Paris Saint-Germain, the Madrid dream's over. But if he leaves Man United now and goes somewhere, goes to Madrid or it goes to PSG and it doesn't work out, and then we go on to these amazing things that United fans are hoping for, it might feel like he bolted too early. It does feel like he's got a lot to really consider here. And of course, money plays a part, but it's also, this is the last big deal of his life. It's the last major contract that he's going to sign. And right now, in your gut, what's your gut telling you about Paul Pogba and where you think he'll sign next?
Well, let's talk about a little bit of history in the last 12 months about Paul Pogba and Manchester United. Paul Pogba informed the football club that he'd be willing to stay at Manchester United if they could negotiate a new contract. He's happy under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He likes the manager. He likes the direction of the football club. He likes the signings. He likes everything. So it's very, very different to where he was at the end of the Mourinho reign, where he was talking about leaving the football club. What else has changed in that time? Well, Real Madrid are not very good. Real Madrid haven't got Zinedine Zidane anymore, which was a big pull to go to that football club. And obviously, then you got PSG and the chance to maybe link up with Neymar and with Mbappe. But there's also the other side of this coin here is that these things don't always count when we're talking about finances. But Pogba has said in the past that he didn't want to play for PSG, and simply because his mum is a Marseille fan and he was brought up in a Marseille house. And even though he grew up in Paris, PSG were like the team he never, ever wanted to play for. Those things don't really mean a lot when you put a lot of money on the table. He could go there. We know this. But that's why I said just 5 minutes ago that that deal itself is kind of more hot air than anything else, because that's not being put out there by Pogba's people. Pogba's people are talking to Manchester United still. That rumour came from a third party via PSG, really essentially a blog, not even really a set of journalists. And that's blown up in the last week or two, and the English press have run with it. So it's like this. If Manchester United put the deal on the table that Paul Pogba wants, and it's going to be in excess of £350,000, and you look at what he brings to the football club in terms of commerce, in terms of being a superstar footballer, he's worth that money. There's no doubt about it. When you look at maybe playing 375 for a goalkeeper like David De Gea, you know, if you don't offer Paul Pogba that kind of money, then there's something wrong there. I think where we stand is that Manchester United might be looking towards the future without Paul Pogba. And that's really what this all comes down to. They might be looking for a sale, therefore they can go for another midfielder. And maybe then they could have a central part of their team on a lesser wage that helps the whole outlook for the football club going forward. They're not then tied into maybe another 3 or 4 years of Paul Pogba. If, say, in a year's time, he gets an injury like he did this year and he sat on the sideline, that suddenly becomes bad business. So that's the way I think United are looking at it. And that's really the crux of this deal with Paul Pogba. But let's not pretend that Pogba wants to go for money and all of this rubbish. At the end of the day, he's going to get the most money at Manchester United. That's just the way it is. We pay bigger wages than anyone else. So going to PSG, he'd probably be on less wages than what he could earn in the Premier League. You know, League One is not the biggest earning league in the world. And I don't think he's going there to go and play and win that division. It could happen. But I still think at the moment, Manchester United and staying at Manchester United with Varane and with Sancho and maybe another midfield signing or a right back, yeah, Manchester United look ready to win, and Paul Pogba will be a massive part of that.
Yeah, listen, I the money side of things, listen, having worked with a lot of footballers in my previous life, my previous job, whatever you can get yourself paid, get yourself paid. 95% of football players are working class men. And I love seeing that, you know, get what you're worth, I don't care what the club thinks he's worth. If they want to give him 400 grand a week, do it. But what I care about is that it's good business in the sense of he doesn't sign a 4-year deal and spend 2.5 years of it out injured, because then it's wasted money, essentially. I think that who we buy in midfield, as you say earlier, is partly dependent on Pogba. That the CAMAVINGA deal is so interesting. And when I hear the reports on this, people are reading the headlines and they're not listening to the finer details. Something that Dean Jones has said on here a few times, and I'm sure you're aware of this as well with your connections in the game and your knowledge, is it's not a deal that they look at as he's going to walk into the first team instantly and take things by storm. It's a player for the future. If Pogba stays, a CAMAVINGA style midfielder is an easier signing this summer because you don't need to rush him in. Whereas if Pogba was to leave, then it's a case of, well, is CAMAVINGA ready to replace Pogba right now? No. It may need to be the Ruben Neves, the Sao Niguez's of this world that you go after because they're slightly more experienced. So I think Pogba is key to a lot of what goes on in that midfield area, both on and off the pitch. And interestingly, when I spoke about the midfield, and it's in Pogba, I want to talk a little bit about the other element here, title challenge. This squad being ready to title challenge. And viewers, do us a favor and smash the like button. We are going to talk rivals a little bit later on in this show as well. So stay with the Football Terrace. We've got lots more from Rob here as well. Get your super chats in, any member comments as well, and we'll put them out and we'll pose them to Rob. Also, before you leave today, if you go to our description below, you'll see the first bit of information there is sub. Go sub and follow the TF Masterclass. That's Rob's brand new podcast. In fact, it's easy if you plug it, Rob, because you know much more about it than me. Let everyone know what it's about and where they can find it.
Yeah, the Masterclass is a Manchester United podcast about tactics. So what we do after every game is we look at the game itself and break it down, look at individual players, look at the system, and try and tell our audience what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was trying to do. I think what we find in these Twitter times is that there's so much kind of dust and dirt and murk as around tactics and what they actually really are, that there isn't kind of a definitive voice. So we've done that now for 12 months. That's been running during that period, and it's been fantastic. We really enjoyed it and built up a big audience. So you can find it obviously at TF Masterclass, or you can find it just on my Twitter handle, which is _Rob_B on Twitter, and join us for the show. We've just done one on Raphael Varane and what he will do at Manchester United and what we believe he's been brought to do by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So that's out there on Twitter, or you can watch it on YouTube or listen on Spotify.
There we go. I'll put the link into the comment section. The link's also in the description below. So go and check that out. Brilliant, brilliant stuff. Very informative as well. And my view is listen to everything and not just read what the show's titled as, because the listening is the education part, and the education is absolutely key. But in terms of title challenging, I want to start with the central midfield area. You know, there's always a lot of a lot of Man United fans don't like when Paul Pogba's in a double pivot, as an example. They think it's too much away from him. You then always get the caveat thrown in of, but he plays there for France, and France have been very successful in the last 3 to 4 years. Do you feel that with the players that have come in and the players that have come in, what's the word I'm looking for here? Do you feel like with more creativity from Sancho, a more solid back line, if Pogba was used more in the double pivot and not needed to be used further up the field, do you see that creating a much more balance to Man United in terms of the way we play and operate?
For me, the answer is no, and I'll tell you why. Paul Pogba doesn't want to play on the double pivot. He doesn't want to play in front of a defence and pick the ball up and be a kind of deep lying playmaker. Because that's not what he does. He's never done it. When he was a kid at Manchester United, he didn't do it. He didn't do it at Juventus. It's not his job. It's this kind of Mourinhoism that we've got about Paul Pogba being a number 6, playing deeper. Paul Pogba wants to play up the pitch. Now, he did play in the double pivot with France when they won the World Cup with Kante, and that double pivot was kind of very specific, based around Kante's skill set, allowing Pogba to go. And the truth about the double pivot is they're not 2 defensive midfielders, and I say this every week on our show. It's 2 players where one goes and one sits, and that's what a double pivot is supposed to do tactically. So Paul Pogba can play the double pivot. He's just not brilliant at it. He's just not world class at it. What Paul Pogba is really good at doing is playing on the left side of a midfield, either in a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1. That's where he wants to play this season. And I think this is where it will come down to what Ole believes he's going to do this year with the team. So if he needs Paul Pogba for that system in a 4-2-3-1 on the left, playing forward and playing nearer the box and nearer Bruno Fernandes and nearer the striker, then I think Paul Pogba will get a new contract. If Ole believes that Marcus Rashford will take that role and Rashford will play all the games and that's how he sees it being, I think you'll see that Paul Pogba will be sold, and then Manchester United will buy a midfielder that does the job of the double pivot or someone playing a little bit more deep lying. So no, I don't want to see Paul Pogba playing deeper. It's like, you know, round holes, square pegs, all of that stuff, isn't it? Paul Pogba is one of the most blessed genius footballers of his generation, and at Manchester United we kind of say, do some defending, Paul, do some running, Paul. It's stupid. So Paul Pogba, if he goes to PSG, will be playing right next to Neymar and right next to Mbappe. He's not going to be sat in front of a defence. And I think that this is the bigger question for Pogba now about what he wants to do. And I don't see him playing in a double pivot anytime soon or doing a more defensive function when he's shown that he is an expert at the other end of the pitch. And at his age, he needs to be playing there. You know, he will play the double pivot if Ole wants him to, but not every week. You know, that's not what he wants to do. He wants to be an attacking player. And he said only like 5 or 6 weeks ago that this coming season, he wants to score goals, he wants to get more assists, and he wants to attack. So I think he's made it quite clear about the type of football he wants to play.
And that's a really interesting take, because I'm a bit like you. I prefer seeing Paul Pogba further up the field. I don't like the label, although I know I've used it in the past. It's a little lazy of luxury player, but to a degree, there's an element of truth to that. Paul Pogba is, you want it to be, if you're going to build a team that's got Paul Pogba in it, and in fact Bruno Fernandes in it, you need a really solid structure behind them, and then just say to, go on, lads, go and do your thing. And what I'm really intrigued about is this. I'm a massive Marcus Rashford fan, but I don't care who starts. I just want it to be the best Man United team possible. So if you're starting off if you think about the way Bruno fluctuates from the left to the right to the center, Sancho loves the right-hand side. He does the same. Paul Pogba is more central to the left-hand side. Those 3 players behind a striker, the fluidity, and that's one thing about Ole's football that I've always noticed, is it needs people that are, from an attacking point of view, that are technically proficient and fluid in their movement, so that, you know, they're equally as strong on the left as they are on the right at moments in the game. And that could be the benefit. And as you say, if that is what Ole decides to do with Paul Pogba, if he thinks that Paul Pogba can deliver that, the fitness levels are key, I'd be more than up for seeing that. And then it's down to the Rashfords and the Martials and everybody in behind to, well, when you come in now, you know what you've got to do. You've got to knock these players out of their position. Maybe it's, you know, the chance for the Rashfords and the Greenwoods to say, well, actually, we're going to make a beeline now to become the main striker when Cavani goes in the next season. There's all those options there. And I think as a Man United fan, what I see a lot on socials is everybody arguing. What they're generally arguing about is, how can I put a point across to get my favorite player into that team? Where my view is just, I don't care as long as I couldn't care less if Rashford and Sancho didn't start a game all season if we won the Premier League. Like, it just wouldn't bother me personally. And it's what I like about what we're doing in the transfer market, and fingers crossed we can keep Paul at the football club, is suddenly we're stacked. Suddenly you think you could have a bench that has Martial and Rashford and Donny van de Beek on it, and Greenwood on it as well. Like, that's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing to be there. When you think 5 years ago, you know, we had Morgan Schneiderlin. And do you get what I mean? Like, it's
totally.
The level is there. And I think it's something for Man United fans to be excited about. And I suppose the next part of it is, I'm going to use the social media term, Ollie tap. A lot of people think that Ollie, no matter how good this team is, Ollie's always going to be the reason that we can't go to that next level. What's your take on the progression of Ollie and his ability to turn this exciting, young, vibrant team into title winners and Champions League winners?
Well, first of all, let's take Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, the human being, out of the picture and just look at some facts, because facts are important when it comes to these things. So there's no doubt that Jose Mourinho was factually one of the greatest managers of all time. You know, he came to the football club, won 2 trophies, got us to second place. And as I said again on my podcast the other day, at the end of that second year, it was quite clear that the club was going in the wrong direction. And year 3, it all blew up. So it's quite clear. It wasn't something that just kind of happened and results happened and he was gone. When Ole came into the football club, the place was in a real mess. So he's now had a kind of 2.5, 3 year period to sort things out, to kind of change us stylistically, to allow us to attack more. Now, is Manchester United a better football team than it was when he first came to the football club? Yes, and that's on him. He chooses the tactics, he chooses the philosophy, he chooses the coaching, he chooses the system, everything. It goes through the manager. The problem with Ole, and this is how it is that he doesn't sing and dance for the cameras. You know, he doesn't play that game. He's made a specific choice to be as bland as he can be in front of a camera, because he does his work behind the scenes. And he says this, and we know this from the football club, from people we talk to, whether it be players or staff. We know what he really does behind the scenes that you don't see on Twitter. That when you're watching Manchester United's Twitter stream and you're seeing them training and Ole's got a big smile on his face, that it all looks happy-go-lucky, and that's what Ole is and Ole does. We know that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is a taskmaster. Yeah, he's hard on the players. He makes demands of them. He tells them what he wants. And if they don't conform, they go. And we've seen it with plenty of players, haven't we? So I think where Ole is now, he deserves this contract, because it doesn't matter if a fan thinks that Ole can't coach. What matters is where Manchester United are today and who was the guy that put them there. And the most important person at any football club always is the manager. So Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's put this project together. Varane's coming. If Varane didn't rate Solskjaer, he wouldn't be coming. If Sancho had talked to Ole for a year and didn't rate Ole, he wouldn't be coming. This is what it all comes down to. Fans, it's a popularity contest. So people would like to get rid of him. Yes, they would have liked Pochettino at one stage. You know, I think that was a viable choice when he was free in the market, and that could have happened. But there's all sorts of things to play around here. And it's the fact that Manchester United have failed for 8 years now. And it's time to kind of dig your heels in and do the work, the hard work. And Ole has been the guy that's triggered that. It doesn't matter if fans don't like him. Fans, at the end of the day, if Manchester United win a title this season, they'll all be falling at his knees. Doesn't matter if they love him today. And that's the sad thing, is that all these people who are kind of giving Ole a lot of stick, suddenly they'll all about turn and they'll tweet in their 140 characters, Terry, I got it wrong. And they'll think, that's all right. Well, maybe try supporting your manager, because he needs it.
I love what you've said there. And I'm very, very open about this. I'm someone that I'm not convinced that he's good enough to take us to winning the Premier League and Champions League as an example. But I'm very open about this. I don't associate with Ollie inners or Ollie outers. I do find the vast
me neither. Yeah.
To be very poisonous people. The difference between me and an Ollie outer, there's one clear distinction. I am desperate to be wrong. I will not slag him off, as in say nasty things about him, call him pejoratives. Yeah, he's a bit bland and boring in his press conferences, but do you know what? I don't watch press conferences anyway. Do you know why? Because every manager at every club says pretty much the same thing. There's almost no.
Yeah.
You know this. You've been to press conferences. You have to submit your question before you go there, and if it isn't one they want to answer, they tell you to change it. Like, it's not. There's nothing. You get nothing from a press conference that you really want to know. So it's almost. I don't bother watching, so it doesn't impact me. I totally understand that he will protect, like Fergie did, his players in front of the cameras. He'll say things to deter away from what the issues are, but he'll walk straight into that dressing room and slam people. I always remember watching Gary Neville and him talk back during lockdown, and Gary Neville was teasing him about how they were all winding him up the first day that he joined Man United, saying that he looked like a librarian or like a primary school teacher and not a footballer. And then you just saw this little face change on Ollie where he said, yeah, but what did I do to you in the first training session after what you said? And Gary was like, yeah. And it turned out like Ollie just went out there and sent him, 6 foot up in the air with a tackle.
Yeah.
And that's the point. It's like he's one of those, they always say, like, when you're out with someone, be afraid of the quiet one, not the one with the big mouth. That's Ollie for me from a personal point of view. I am so desperate to be proven wrong and for him to be good enough. I will support every game. I won't cry about the starting lineups. I'll wait till after the game to assess it. And I think that's the sensible thing to do with Ollie, because what you've said is key. And I've been talking about this on Twitter for a few weeks now. If at the end of the day, these top-class players are willing to stay, and especially if Paul Pogba signs a new contract to play for Ollie when he's just got a 3-year deal, I get to a point where I have to start questioning my own opinion as a man and say, surely these professional footballers have won World Cups. Like Sancho, who is the most creative in terms of statistically anyway, young footballer in the history of European football from debut till now in the top 4 league. If they want to play for Ollie and I don't think he's good enough, who's right? I don't know. Like, I have to start to question myself on that a little bit. I just have to. I think that's a sensible thing. Sorry, mate, I've got a chat here. Sorry, mate, from Tonks, who says Rob is quite level-headed and analytical. Great guest, great show as always. I'll be honest with you, Tonks. That's because Rob is an absolute professional. Yeah, he knows what he's talking about. He's a great guy. Thank you very much for that super chat, my friend. Thank you. You were going to say something, Rob. Sorry, mate.
I just think the people you have to listen to, and certainly in our industry and the way we work, are the players. The players are the first people to tell you when things are going wrong at a football club. They're the first. So when everything was going wrong under Jose Mourinho, the Manchester United dressing room were pretty vocal. Everyone heard about it. Everyone knew what was going on at that football club. And it was quite clear that it was going into the ground. And the players didn't like it. The players couldn't do anything about it. It wasn't about tactics or systems or who's playing or who's not playing. It was about vibe. It was about how they were being man-managed, and they didn't like it. At the moment, and for really the whole the kind of 2-year period, since you've seen players like Romelu Lukaku leave, Alexis Sanchez, players who were not really happy at the football club, you've seen that everybody at United are pretty happy. And it's not happy in mediocrity. This isn't a team that's like, well, we come in, we earn our money and we go home. This is a team that is desperate to win, where people are ambitious and they understand what it means to wear the shirt. That has come from the manager. Now, it doesn't matter if YouTuber X doesn't like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It really doesn't matter. What matters is how the players feel about it, because it's the players that play for the manager. And I think when you look at Ole, he is desperately ambitious himself. He wants to prove people wrong. But at the same time, I don't think he looks inwards. He's not introspective. He doesn't think, am I a good coach or am I not a good coach? He believes he's a good coach. And when people like Sir Alex Ferguson are saying to him, you're doing the right things, this is what I would have done, so I'm with you. When he has that kind of support around him, then who should be ones telling him that he's doing it wrong? Twitter?
Do you know what? Again, what you pulled on there is, I saw a lot towards the end of last season, people saying he was famed for his man management skills. Even people that didn't like his tactics were saying he's got good man management skills. Then they started to play that down by saying, actually, they started looking for this was bad. I actually saw someone tweet today. What he was implying was that Ollie sentimentally gave Rashford penalty duties a couple of seasons ago to boost his stats, where he should have given them to the number 9 Martial, because, and his words were, all number 9s at all top clubs take the penalties for their clubs. He said it was odd to have given it to Rashford, who wasn't a number 9, which I thought was just another one of the little takes, which one puts down Rashford, and equally are you suggesting for a second, no matter what you think of Ollie's tactics, they assessed the players in training for who the best penalty taker was. And you just think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer just naturally went, you know what? I'm not going to give it to the best penalty taker. I'm going to give it to Rashford because I want to improve his stats. Only for 6 months later, when Bruno signed, for it to be instantly switched over to Bruno because he's the best penalty taker in Europe, let alone at Man United. These are the kind of takes was why I can't associate with Ole Outers, because it gets to a point where your opinion isn't, I don't think Ole's good enough. It's, I'm going to write and create as much nonsense, tell as many lies, twist as many facts as I can to make Ole look bad. And I just don't understand the rationale behind behaving that way.
Yeah, well, this is the age we live in. You know, just to answer that, you know, Steve Bruce took penalties for Manchester United under Sir Alex Ferguson. Where did Steve Bruce play? Well, he certainly wasn't the centre forward, was he? He was a centre back. So it's about who takes your penalties. It's got nothing to do with anything towards that. It's just made up. It's conjecture. It's over the top. So the whole thing about the hashtag Ole in, Ole out, both sides of it are kind of wrong. You know, it's not about in or out. It's about proving yourself. So like I said before, people always say to me, oh, you were a Jose out. Well, I wrote plenty before Jose came to the football club that I wanted him to be the manager. I lauded him in year 1 and 2, said he did really well. And in year 3, I called for his sacking. And I called for his sacking because the football club and the players didn't want to play for him anymore. So it was more important that Manchester United move on and find the next manager. So I think if that happened with Ole tomorrow or in the next few months or this year, then the writing's on the wall. It doesn't matter if you scored that goal in 1999. It doesn't matter if you're a legend or not. No one cares about that stuff. This is the football business. So ultimately, I think when you look at Ole, if the team continues to do well and carries on the correct trajectory, then he'll stay at the football club. He'll have earned that deal and he'll carry on. It doesn't matter if people like him or not. You know, this is the whole thing we talk about stylism. You know, we talked before about, say, like Chelsea this season winning the Champions League. Well, you know, were they a better team under Tuchel or were they a better team under Lampard? Well, I preferred watching them under Lampard, but Tuchel showed that he could change them in 4 or 5 months stylistically to win a Champions League. Still dull as anything to watch, but it depends about what you want. And we all want to win. And that's what it comes down to. So for Ole, the next trick now is to prove that he can win. You know, it's all very well him kind of being the babyface assassin and playing these games and not saying anything in front of cameras. He can do that forever. But now it's just about taking the team to a next level. And when you've brought Varane in and Sancho and maybe one other, then you've got the chance to win.
I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree with you more on that. I couldn't agree with you more at all. And listen, I respect fan opinion. My channel and what we do is built about fans giving their opinion. What I challenge is when the opinion goes away from delivering facts, like that example I gave you around all number 9s take penalties. I'm like, that isn't the rule. The rule at every football club on the planet is the best penalty taker at the club takes penalties. However, I would probably say 80% of them are your number 9 striker, and so they should be. I actually get very concerned about strikers that are not the best penalty takers, unless you have a Jorginho or a Dennis Irwin or a Bruno that are amazing. Like, I get worried about number 9s that you sometimes see a penalty shootout and a striker's like number 6 on the list. I think, Jesus Christ, how bad are you at finishing?
You see, look, penalties are actually a kind of specialist art. So you can find that a fullback can be the best penalty taker in your club, yeah, and that your number 9, who is used to maybe just being a fox around the box and being reactive, isn't the best striker of a ball from 12 yards. So I don't think that those things are strange at all. I've seen it throughout my life in football, and we've seen it at every football club. You know, Jorginho takes the penalties at Chelsea. Is Jorginho the best finisher at the football club? Well, no. And you see in penalty shootouts, how many times does striker miss the target or miss his penalty? Just because someone wears a number on their back doesn't mean that they should take a penalty. It's all about watching it in training and getting somewhere and finding a way. Marcus Rashford, going back to that, is still, without doubt, one of the top 2 or 3 penalty takers at Manchester United. That's why he was taking penalties. And forget the penalty he had for England the other day. I think that was a kind of anomaly. But I think he scored something like 93% of his penalties or something crazy. He's actually found the back of the net more often than not. And United are blessed. They've got penalty takers. Someone like Telles is a penalty taker, but never takes one because he's never on the football pitch. That's the starters. But you're right about Bruno. Bruno's the best penalty taker at the football club. Therefore, he takes them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And the Rashford one at the Euros, I mean, he absolutely sent Donnarumma. If Rashford had 5 minutes on the pitch to properly get warmed up into the game.
Exactly.
But it's,
totally.
Yeah. It is what it is. But I agree with a lot of what you've said there, mate, around the Ole thing. I've got my reservations. I've got my concerns. And everybody always does. And this is the thing. You haven't got certain Man United players. I have reservations about certain elements of their games, but I still support them. And that's the thing for me, which I think is key, is that word supporter. And I don't, you obviously aware of Saeed, part of the United stand, does a lot of stuff with Don Robbie now and stuff, and really good guy. And I love what he says. He's an Ollie outer in large sense, but he's like, when I go to the ground and I'm in the stadium, it's 100% support for every single player and manager the whole way through. And I think that's what's key. It's support at the right times. Like, I mute the word. I've actually got muted on my Twitter feed now. I turned them on about an hour and a half before the game starts, MUFC and lineups, because I can't stand the meltdown after the lineup gets announced. Whatever the lineup is, there's always 10,000 people crying their eyes out, and it just becomes nauseating, really. But I think Ollie's there's pressure on Ollie, but there should always be pressure on Ollie to deliver and do what it is that he's got to do. In terms of rivals, so there's obviously the rivals are doing business at the minute. Chelsea closing in on securing the situation with Jules Koundé. As we spoke about earlier on today on the terrace, that there was a slight issue with the swap deal element, which there nearly always is, because swap deals are almost impossible with Kurt Zuma now maybe going to West Ham. That's slowing down. But Chelsea looking at Koundé, that looks like it's going to be completed imminently. Haaland and Rice. You've got City that are now closing in on Jack Grealish, especially. How do you feel the rivals are doing this summer, and how that's going to impact Man United? Who do you look at? We know that City are going to be a good team here regardless. Who do you think is doing some really good work, and you think it's going to be really tough for United to sort of overcome next year?
Well, all the top clubs obviously want to strengthen every year, whether you win the trophies the year before or not. So that's a kind of given. I think when you look at specific targets, I think Koundé's a really good target for Chelsea. I think he'd be a big upgrade on Zuma. I don't see Zuma going in a swap deal at all. Zuma's going to get paid in the Premier League. Why would he go to Spain? The money isn't in La Liga, so why would you do that? But there's that opportunity, obviously, to move him on. That would be part of the deal in terms of the money for Koundé. So I think when you look at Chelsea, they won the Champions League last year, but it was a bit of an anomaly because they are nowhere near a complete team. You know, they need to go and strengthen. And it was kind of like they won the Champions League by the by. It wasn't because they had the perfect squad. It was just that they managed to work it out towards the end. And let's face it, Manchester City blew that Champions League title. It wasn't really as much of Chelsea going out and winning it. So I think the Chelsea will be stronger next year just because they will make signings. When you look at the Grealish Manchester City link, again, I kind of think there's a lot of smoke going on there. I don't really know how true it is. I think when you talk about 100 million for a player from Aston Villa, I can't see it happening. Manchester City will not pay anything like that for a player. They won't play 120, 130, 140 for Harry Kane either. Why is that? It's because they've already got a very complete squad. So unless Manchester City want to kind of rip their project up and start doing that and getting rid of players for 20, 30, 40 million so they could bring in equivalents at a higher price, then that's not going to happen. So I think City will kind of stick rather than twist. They might bring one in and they'll be as they are, and they'll be as strong as ever because they are a very, very complete squad. And I think when you look at Liverpool, Liverpool have also been linked to Saul Niguez. That's a possibility. But again, I think when you bring back Van Dijk, that resets the kind of landscape for them. They will want to go back to what they were doing 12 months ago and try and push their project on with what they've got. And I think this is probably the last year for Salah and maybe even Mane at Liverpool. So they'll want to all go out on a bang. So there might not be a lot of transfer business coming from Anfield just simply because of that. So it'll be interesting to see how it all develops. I think United are in a really good place. I think if you bring in the two players that we've talked about and maybe bring in a third, just an option for the midfield, you'll certainly need a third if Pogba leaves. And that is kind of 50-50 at the moment. I think United will challenge. They challenged last year in terms of being second, even though they weren't close to City. But it only means that City need to lose 2 or 3, and Man United needs to maybe win 1 more, 2 more, and you've got a title race. It's as simple as that. So I think United are a lot closer than maybe the Ollie outers would want you to believe. But of course, they want you to believe that United are terrible at the moment because that means they get rid of him and they get maybe a manager they want. The worst thing is the grass is not always greener. You get rid of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who do you bring in? At the moment, there isn't really a raft of managers at the top end where you think, yeah, that manager will take you to the next level. There's some names, but I'm happy in terms of the stylism with the football. And I think if we're second and get into a European final, which we should have won, let's be honest, If you get there, you're in a good place. And that's why these top footballers are wanting to join the football club.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to back up your point about Paul Pogba, Fabrizio has just said that United are still confident they can keep Paul Pogba this summer.
They are, yes.
They are. And Rob, I've seen Rob on a number of other streams talking about that and saying that as well. And absolutely spot on there. It isn't a foregone conclusion with Paul Pogba.
And the important part, Terry, is that Paul Pogba informed Manchester United 6 months ago that he was happy, he wanted to stay, and he wanted to talk about a contract. If that wasn't the case, he would have kept his mouth shut. He'd have said nothing, and he'd have kept running his contract down. And you'd have seen Raiola in the last 6 months doing backflips, talking to every football club in the world, talking to every news station, saying that his client wants to leave. Now, Raiola has said that in the past. He has talked about Pogba leaving, and maybe it would be best for him. And let's be honest, a year or two ago, I might have agreed with Paul Pogba. But as it stands now, Pogba has said he wants to stay. If they give him the contract he wants, then I think he will. But I don't know if Manchester United will. I think they've got other things burning. And when you bring someone like Varane to the club, he's going to cost a hell of a lot of money in wages. And they might want to offset that by letting one go.
Well, you've also got to look at, we haven't had the success that Fergie did. But Fergie, on a number of occasions also, sometimes it was for problems and sometimes it was for bringing through the next piece of talent. There could be the mileage to say we could pay Paul Pogba 400 grand a week for 5 years, or we could look to reinvest that money in a different player, maybe 2 players who we might have here for the next 8 or 9 years and allow Pogba to move on. We've seen for one reason or another, we've seen Beckhams and Ruben Neves and Stams and Kanchelskis and Paul Inces, just off that's the top of my head to name a few that have moved on when you actually think could have got a few more years out of them. And I won't, again, a lot of Ollie outers are saying that if Paul Pogba leaves, Man United are dead. And again, what's stupid about that logic is, well, he's retiring in 5 years anyway. So whether it's now or in 5 years, you're telling us Man United are dead because of one player. As much as I rate Paul Pogba, the club isn't dead because Paul Pogba leaves. It's a madness. It's a madness.
It's stupid. Look, Michael Owen left Liverpool, went to Real Madrid. Liverpool won the Champions League. Coutinho, obviously famously, went to Barcelona. Liverpool went on and won everything after he left. Players leave. Players come and go. Paul Pogba goes. I would be sad to see him go because I think it would be true that he hasn't fulfilled his potential at Manchester United. But I do think that there's still plenty of space for him to grow into the role that we want him to. He's still young enough. Like, let's be honest, he's not an old player. I think the injuries from last year are a concern because there's been kind of a couple of years now of injuries, and you have to look at that with the medical reports. And I do believe United are doing that. I think that's why there is some hesitation around his contract. But let's put it like this. Paul Pogba makes Manchester United a much more valuable brand. So forget about the football, which is a bit we all talk about. As a brand, Paul Pogba brings in the money, and Manchester United know this. So if it just comes down to those things about figures and money, Paul Pogba's going to get the contract he wants, and he knows it because that's what it's about. It's about selling shirts on that level. The other side of the coin is, can Paul Pogba help Manchester United become Premier League champions? As a football journalist and someone who looks at tactics and strategy and things like that, my answer to that is yes, 100%, because Paul Pogba's won a World Cup and won loads of trophies. It's like Varane, 18, major trophies, 4 Champions League titles. Can he help Manchester United win a trophy? Yes, I think he can. So if he comes in at 45 million or 50 million, that is cheap, if you're going to bring in stone cold winners. So I would like to see Pogba remain. And I do think that there's a very good chance that he will, simply because he wants to. If he didn't want to, I would be sat here now saying, sell him quickly. Now, within the next 2 or 3 weeks, get your 50 million, and whoever wants him, Juventus, Real Madrid, Barcelona, whoever comes up with the readies, get him in a car, get him across the channel and flog him as quick as you can. But that's not the truth. The truth is that Pogba wants to play for Manchester United, and Manchester United are getting closer to winning. They're like this close now, whereas maybe a year ago, it was like this. So I think that Pogba's in a good place and Manchester United are in a good place. It just depends if United see Pogba as the guy to take them over the top.
There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, the link is now pinned to the live comment section. If you want to phone in and you want to ask any questions have a question ready, more so for Rob than me. You can ask me a question any day of the week. It's like, if you've got any questions for Rob, I'm sure Rob's also up for, if you want to challenge something he said, like, let's have a conversation. This is part of football. Let's have a little bit of a debate here. So a lot of people agreeing in the comments. Some people disagreeing. Come on, sensibly, politely, and let's have a conversation about this. The link is now pinned if you want to have your say about these matters. But yeah, I agree. I agree with what you said there about Pogba. It's do you think it's possible? Maybe this is fan theory rather than I'm definitely not. I don't have a journalistic theory because I'm not one. But do you think Pogba could stay but not sign a new deal until, say, January to maybe test how the land lies after these new signings? Do you think that's plausible?
No, because it's bad business. It's bad business for Manchester United. It's good business for Paul Pogba. Of course, in January, he'd be eligible to sign a deal with a club from abroad. And there is that possibility is that he is trying to negotiate that a little bit. It's kind of, if he digs his heels in, he's going to be maybe another 20 or 30 million pound richer by doing it that way on a kind of free transfer as a free agent. But that is not something Manchester United are going to allow. They're not going to allow it. They would rather sell him to Liverpool for 50 million if that was on the table, because you want the money. It's not about, fandom or where we are with that. However, that's not a true thing. Liverpool are not involved in anything to do with Paul Pogba as it stands. But you would get takers at around that price. And I think that if that's what United have decided to do, and I think that's kind of what I'm leaning towards, I do think that they are looking for a sale so they can go and do other business and restructure their wage structure, then I think you might see that Paul Pogba goes for something that many United fans are kind of blown away from in terms of price. It might well be 40 million or something like that. And obviously people believe that he's worth a lot more money than that. And he is commercially. And I think that's why the deal might still happen, is because he will rake back more money for Manchester United in shirt sales and in commerce, even if he doesn't really achieve it on the pitch, because he's Paul Pogba. He's one of maybe 5 footballers in the world that can print money for his football club. So this is why he's such a valuable asset in terms of superstardom, in terms of the kind of social media following that he has. I know fans don't like to listen to that bit and they get upset about all of that. However, they're invested in it because they're the ones powering that side of the machine. And I think when you look at it, Paul Pogba is still a world-class top player. We saw it last year. And also his stats, drill down in his stats prove that he can help his team win. It's just that you need to go and buy a Varane. You need to go and buy a Sancho. You need to go and help the boy, and let's be honest, the team he's played at Manchester United for 6-7 years, it's not been a great one, has it? It's been very average and it's not worked. The project that they've had, the recruitment until the last 2 years has not worked. I think Ole has reset that recruitment and I think that is seen and appreciated by the whole Manchester United team.
I agree with that point 100%. I went back and looked at like starting lineups from that first year that Pogba was here for some games. And yeah, you had Zlatan, there's some talent, but it was Smalling and Blin at the back, and Darmian playing at left back as an example, and Schneiderlin and Basti like holding the midfield. And you just sort of look back at it and think and compare it to the quality now. It's night and day. Got some calls to take now from some people. Have your questions ready for man like Rob here with us today. First up, we're going to get Matthew on the show. Matthew, what do you want to say, mate?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, do you think Ollie will take more risks going into next season? And if so, do you think they'll pay off?
I think when you look at risks, what does risks mean? Well, if you go and do more and try and be a more attacking team, if that makes you lose games, what should you do? So I think when it comes to Ole and his squad, he is a moderate at the end of the day. He wants to win games. He's talked a lot about 4-3-3 and wanting to win football matches on the front foot. And let's be honest, we've seen plenty of that football. But people always still associate a double pivot as being a defensive thing, and I don't believe it is. I think you can play 4-2-3-1 and go out and annihilate teams on the front foot. So I think United will do that next year. I think that's what they'll try and do. You'll see just dropping Sancho into that system will revolutionise it on the front end of the pitch. And then eventually you're going to have to go and buy a striker. So yes, I do think you'll see more front-footed football next year and more exciting football. But excitement doesn't pay the bills. Winning does. And I think that will be still the core component of what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer will do next season with his team.
Thank you. Also, because Pogba and all the players that were on international duties this summer, they're coming back on Monday. Do you think that will have an impact? I saw that picture of Varane and Pogba on FaceTime or Instagram Live. Do you think that's confirming that he likes a project that Ollie's planning to give next season?
Well, like I just said a minute ago, Paul Pogba is very happy at Manchester United. And if Paul Pogba wasn't happy at Manchester United, he wouldn't be ringing Varane, would he, and showing his face on it? He just wouldn't, would he? If he's leaving the football club and trying to put a message out to PSG that he'd like to leave United, he would be like this. You wouldn't see his face until he's in a new shirt in a new club. That's how it is. Instead, he's on Instagram with his mate, waving to United fans. He knows he's followed by the whole United universe. He's not a mug. He's not stupid. He wants that deal, but he wants Manchester United to pay him, and Manchester United need to pay him to keep him. If they don't pay him, then he rightfully should go and listen to other football clubs.
Awesome.
Yeah, Matt, thank you very much indeed, mate. Thank you for coming on, asking those questions. Next on the show, we're going to go to Mr. Nelson's with us now. What are you saying, Mr. Nelson?
Thank you so much for having me today. My question to you, Mr. Rob, is that if Oli gets Ruben Neves as a player, do you think Oli would basically manage the team as to how we are expecting him to in order to win a title?
Well, first of all, I'm a big Ruben Neves fan, and I kind of said 12 months ago that he was a player I'd like to bring to the football club if we sold Paul Pogba. So that was when Paul Pogba was in a stage of his career where it did look like he was going to leave the team. I think with Ruben Neves, he allows you to do something different in midfield. And this is what Ole talked about by buying Varane at the back, is to be able to play different systems, but to be able to move the ball progressively a little bit more. Ruben Neves, he can be a 6, he can be an 8, and he can be a 10. Many in the way that Donny van der Beek can be, but I think he can do the 6 and the 8 roles much better than Donny. So I think that if you buy Ruben Neves, it does get you closer to the title without a doubt. But then it might mean that you have to sacrifice someone like Donny van der Beek, because if he didn't play last season, he certainly ain't going to play this year if you buy someone like Ruben Neves.
That's wonderful. And the thing is, I wouldn't want to see Donny van der Beek leave, because I mean there's a lot that he can offer to the club. But the thing is, seeing how Ole Gunnar Solskjaer managed the team last season, I mean there were some good players like Donny van der Beek, for instance. Looking at the case now, if he gets better player in, because we have received 2 players like Sancho and of course Varane, for which I'm very happy about, and Tom Heaton isn't a bad keeper either. But looking at how he managed a team tactically, not by way of man management, but tactically, do you think that he will rotate the squad in the way that he should? Because last season that was a big problem.
Well, this is what we do on our show on the Masterclass, is we look at this and we answer exactly those kind of questions. And the reason why I reference that is because we talk about 4-2-3-1 a lot on our show, and about why Ole does it. And we also talk about why Ole doesn't rotate. So I think looking back 12 months ago and looking for, the last season, the reason why he didn't rotate is just because what he had on the bench was garbage. It's kind of as simple as that. He had a better bench than the year before. But if you look at Donny van der Beek and what he did, Donny van der Beek played 36 games last year and started only maybe a handful in the Premier League. The reason why he didn't start games is not because he's a bad player, but he just wasn't functional in the Premier League. He wasn't cutting the mustard. He wasn't doing the stuff that you want a midfielder to do. So we just talked there about Ruben Neves, and that's why you would bring in someone like Neves, who's Premier League ready, who's actually showed that he can do the graft in a team like Wolves that relies on that graft from a deep lying position. I'll say this. Yesterday, obviously, in the pre-season game, Donny van der Beek looked 6 pounds heavier. He was moving quicker than I've ever seen him before. He was closing down, and he was actually doing stuff that a player in a double pivot should do. Last season, every time we reviewed him in the double pivot, we literally ripped him to shreds because he was just not playing the function and doing what he was supposed to do. So, yes, I think Donny can have an impact this year, but Donny's got to prove that he's a Premier League player and not an Eredivisie Ajax player, because you need to step up, you need to be more mobile, and you need to be better. And that's the only reason I think why Ole doesn't rotate, because when he did rotate, Manchester United would concede goals and lose games.
Thank you very much for that call, Mr. Nelson. Really appreciate that. Do you know what's really interesting as well about that? Goes back to the buying into Ole. If Donny van der Beek wasn't bought into Ole and wasn't bought into working things out, he wouldn't have spent the summer, or probably more than the summer, bulking up, weight training, exercising, and getting himself into a position to be ready to challenge. Even Anthony Martial, who's been tipped with an exit. He's been tipped with an exit this summer. Maybe that's changed now because of the Rashford pending surgery. But I was seeing all the footage from him. He looked slim, he looked trim. He was back to sort of like not pre-season training, but almost the pre-training before it on his holidays, getting in shape, getting ready. players wouldn't do that for a manager they didn't want to play for. They would
Exactly.
spend the summer flirting with other football clubs trying to get away.
Well, they've done what Romelu Lukaku did in the last 6 months of his career at Manchester United. And that was sit on the sidelines and eat loads of pies, because that's what he did. You know, he put weight on, he couldn't run, and he couldn't do anything. So Ole went off. Goodbye. And they were actually parted on good terms. You know, like Romelu actually said, you know, I like Ole, he's a good manager, I'm happy with how it goes, but it just doesn't work for me doing this role. So he was gone. He wanted to go to Inter Milan. But I think when you look at Donny van de Beek, and like what you were just saying there, is that he said at the end of the season when he was with Haaland, he totally put his hand on his heart and said, I have not played well enough to start for Manchester United. That's on me. That's not on the manager. He even said that he's had a brilliant time in 12 months, had everything laid on a plate for him from the manager, from the coaching teams. And he was really disappointed with his own performance and that he wanted to come back stronger. The big question was would Ole tolerate it for another year? Now, I think if you've been in the gym and done what you can see that he's doing, and you can see in that game yesterday that he looked fitter, stronger, more mobile, all the things that you need from him, I think he'll stay. And like you're just saying there, you don't do that for a manager if you really do feel that kind of that manager doesn't appreciate you or won't play you. Donny needs to fight. Every United player needs to fight. Jesse Lingard, if he wants to stay at Man United, he needs to fight. He needs to be better. And all these players need to prove, just like Luke Shaw did last year, yeah? 12 months ago, people wanted Shaw gone. Now Luke Shaw's probably the best left back in the world. You have to go to that level. This is Manchester United. You need to be the best that you can be.
Thank you for that, Rob. We've got Ali on the show, aka iTest here. This should be an interesting call. What you saying, mate?
Yes, I want to challenge some of the propaganda that's been going on this show, yeah. Because you've been talking about I heard Terry talking about look how the squad has progressed from having Fellaini in the team, from having Schneiderlin to having Bruno Cavani. You see, that's all cute, but guess what? These Fellaini's and Schneiderlins deliver trophies, yeah. Because they had a good manager. They had Van Gaal. They had Jose Mourinho. These managers were delivering trophies, even though the level of players that they had was nowhere near as good. But guess what? These managers were slaughtered by the fans. I think they were unfairly treated. But Oli, I think he gets a lot more protection than the Van Gaals and Mourinhos. And I think, as you lot said, he has a better team than those two managers. And also, I believe that Oli has been the most backed manager since Ferguson left. Look at the players he's got in. Maguire for a record fee. Sancho, one of the best youngsters. Varane, one of the best centre-backs in the world. If look at this transfer window, for example, Varane and Sancho. That would probably, if Ferguson had that transfer window, that would rank amongst one of his best ever transfer windows, probably top 5. So look how much Oli's been backed, but he hasn't delivered anything. I want to know what your response is to what I said.
Yeah, the fact is managers should be backed, all managers. So you're right, in a way, you're talking about Louis van Gaal and looking at Jose. And I supported both of those managers in terms of bringing them in. They were the managers that I wanted at that moment in time. But I'll just say this as a fan, separating it and taking off my journalist hat and looking as a fan. I have never been more bored in my seat at Old Trafford than watching Louis van Gaal's team pass the ball sideways 500 times and then watching Jose play the low block against teams that he should have been going out and trying to smash. So this is the problem, is that stylism is one thing. The United way is another thing. You know, what is the philosophy of the football club? What do we expect at Old Trafford when we're watching from our seats? And then the other thing is winning trophies. There are some football fans that just get off on the ladder. So if you win a trophy, you win a League Cup, they're happy, they go home. I've got a little tin pot. I don't think like that as a Manchester United fan. I grew up watching Manchester United not win trophies for 20 or 30 years, just as a kid. Now, I'm not saying I don't want United to win. I want us to play the football that is about the DNA of the football club. And really, that was where Van Gaal and both Jose fell down. Now, I do believe with Ole that he gets that. Why? Because he was at the football club during our most glorious period, and he understands maybe the makeup of what we expect at United. He should be backed. That's the way it is. What I'll say also is this, is that Jose still spent more money than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has. So Jose spent, hundreds and hundreds of millions on footballers that didn't do anything. And we're now looking at replacing Victor Lindelof, a Jose signing, Eric Bailly, a Jose signing. There's plenty of it that's happened in the last 3 or 4 years that hasn't worked, that came from those two managers that you mentioned. Yes, there's no doubt that, they are technically, tactically great managers, but for Manchester United, they were not great, and they really did hurt the football club.
Just before we do that, a massive thank you. We've got a huge surge in Twitch followers. Everyone is now watching us on Twitch. How are you doing? I hope you're all well. You raided us? Who sent you? Who sent you to the Football Terrace? I'd like to know who sent you to the Football Terrace over on Twitch, because a big raid. Make sure you all over here, you click that follow button for us, please, right now. But where did you come from? That's where you come from. Was it Fabrizio Romano sent you to the Football Terrace? Well, thank you very much, man like Fab. Very much appreciate you sending all these wonderful viewers across to the terrace here today. Thank you very, very much indeed. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all good. Some of the pictures just ending are mad. I don't even know how to block them on there. I'm old. But make sure you subscribe to the Football Terrace and follow us on Twitch, but also come and find us on Twitter as well. And come and give us a little YouTube, as well, and come and give us a follow. Thank you very much to Fabrizio, as I say, for sending that across to us right about now. I test. What's your response there to what Rob said?
I think he disrespected the trophies that Jose and Van Gaal won. He was talking about the fans celebrating it, but at the end of the day, what's the goal? The goal is to win trophies. Yes, it might not be the Champions League, the Premier League, but at least they won. That's more than what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has delivered. So I think we can't disrespect that. We can't disrespect that.
It's not a disrespect to trophies. Manchester is the capital of trophies in world football. That's what we call it. When you look at United, for us, we're very lucky that we've got this big trophy room full of absolutely everything, and we can kind of maybe look beyond. For me, it's not just about winning trophies. It's about winning 3 points every week. How do you do it every week after week after week? Because if you get that right, then you win trophies. That's how it is. So yeah, Ole hasn't won a trophy yet. He has to break that duck. The expectation is this year to win a trophy, there's no doubt about it. But as I say on my show as well, I don't get out of bed for a League Cup. I'm not interested. It's silverware, yes, but so what? We've got plenty of them little pots. We want to win the big ones. We want to win the Premier League. We want to be on the right path to win that. Jose, unfortunately, at the end of year 2 into year 3, that failed. Van Gaal never got anywhere near winning the Premier League. And I think that's the ultimate test for a manager, is to where you are in the division to prove week by week of where you're getting those 3 points from. And yes, those 2 managers won trophies, but how many FA Cups have we won? Multiple, almost double digits nearly. It's not really why we do it. We do it to win every week. Not disrespect. It's just that the expectation is different, and the football, the quality of the football must be better.
So basically you're saying that, yes, Ole hasn't won those trophies in the Carabao Cups and FA Cup, but he's building to win the league. I disagree with you. I don't think that will happen.
Whether it happens or not can only be proved in the future, can't it? No one today, you or me, not one of us can say it is or it is not going to happen, because it's not factual. It's just an opinion. But I look at it from a kind of wider scale way of looking at how he's building the football club. Am I happy with the recruitment? Yes, I am. Am I happy with the formation? Yes, I am. Am I happy in terms of stylism, in terms of what United are trying to do every week? Well, overall, yes, there are bits that you can kind of pick holes in. There's no doubt about that. But I think that in terms of the path to glory and the path to winning things, United came second last year with a team that plenty of Ollie outers don't like. They don't like the system, they don't like the players, and they still came second. I think they're closer. So I'm willing to give him time, because ultimately, every time you hang your manager, you've got to find another one. And if you're willing to hang that next manager so quickly, which is what happens in football, then you literally get nowhere. You become Liverpool, and you basically have 30 years without a trophy. Manchester United, what, 8 years now without a Premier League? They need to kind of dig in, buy the right players, and stick with a manager who's got a philosophy.
Listen, ITS, thank you very much, mate, for coming on and having your say today. Really appreciate that, mate. Thank you very,
Cheers,
very
mate.
much.
Thank you.
And it's always good, you know, Rob, I know 100% will back this. It's good to have challenge, and it's good to have
always
on and give us their views and give us their opinions and everything else as well. It truly, truly is important to do that indeed. Everybody that's tuned in to us today, a massive thank you to each and every single one of you. I really appreciate it. Rob, thank you very much for coming on and giving us your views and your opinions on there. I definitely need to sort some mods out on Twitch, but I don't know how to do that, and I'm live streaming right now, so I've got to work out how to do it. But make sure you subscribe to us on the Football Terrace here on YouTube. Check out the description below. Go follow Rob and his brilliant podcast there as well. Everybody that's tuned in to us today on Twitch and on YouTube, a massive thanks to you. We're back later on this evening with more transfer news, more transfer updates for you. Until then, take care. Goodbye. God bless. And we'll see you all